Okay. So I'm Dr. Cynthia Glickman, the Joy Doctor, and we're here live with Forrest Rivers on Messages from the Universe. So I'm Dr. And excuse me for a second, I was having a little technical thing. So
Oh, you're
and welcome to Planet Earth, live from the apocalypse. So welcome, Forrest. It's so great to see you. I've been looking forward to chatting with you today. And I'd like you to, if you could, Forrest has written a book, COVID-19, what is it? The
so
humanity.
COVID-19. Oh, it's all good. COVID-19 and humanity's spiritual awakening.
Yes. And I wanted to start off with a little bit about your background first, actually. Can you share with us like how you got into writing books?
Absolutely. So I've been writing for a number of years now. I suppose when I started writing, man, I've been writing since I was 16, but really on spiritual themes over the last decade, 8, 9 years. Um, and I originally wrote a book called The Hippie Revival
Yeah, I
and
saw
collect
that.
and collected writings, and it was just kind of all about the spiritual themes related to the original hippie movement and how we're seeing a lot of that resurfacing today. It was really focused on sort of like the mystical aspects of spirituality, the direct knowing, if you will. And so I started writing that. And then this book, COVID-19 and Humanity's Spiritual Awakening, I started writing right when the pandemic hit in March. I had been teaching, in my day job, I teach as a community college professor, and we all got sent home for lockdown. And I started just writing a series of what I thought were just individual essays, just talking about different facets of COVID from a spiritual perspective. And then as time went on, it started morphing into a book, a short book, just trying to capture different aspects of the pandemic and how we could use it for our own spiritual awakening, rather than give into the doom and gloom of it.
Right.
How could we use this for our own empowerment and transformation and understanding? So yeah, I've been writing for a while, and it's really taken a turn towards more spiritual themes over the last 8 or 9 years.
Yeah. Well, what's really awesome about your book is that I think it's really important for all of us, no matter what's going on in the world, to be able to refocus our energy on what is this doing to help elevate us, right? How is this helping us to raise our consciousness? And, that what just popped into my mind is like the pearl, right? The pearl doesn't get formed without the dirt and the gunk.
Exactly.
Right. So that's kind of the pain, I'm going to use this, but I think in this world right now, the exposure of all the corruption as well. And so,
oh my gosh. I mean, and I think they're all tied, right? All the corruption that we've seen on the outside that's been um exposed over
exposed.
this last year and a half, to put it mildly. All of that sort of like corruption on the outside is reflective of a lot of
internal or
internal strife and internal misdirection. That's what I was looking for. And or maybe a lack of inner clarity is what has resulted in a lot of this this
no
outer problem.
SHI, you know what? I think you nailed that one.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah,
And that's it. And that's what it is. I mean, I
yeah,
really believe that all of the stuff we're seeing on the outside, that's kind of like rough, and all the corruption and all the stuff that's happened out there is a reflection of lack of inner clarity, and they're directly linked. And so why wouldn't this, it's interesting, if everything's cyclical, and if all this stuff we're seeing is a result of a lack of inner clarity, then maybe all of COVID can serve to reawaken, or put us back into the mindset of approaching things from a spiritual perspective.
yeah.
Maybe
Well,
we've gone overly, maybe COVID has revealed that we've gone overly into the rational, overly into the well, how do I put this? I guess even more simply, we've forgotten spirit or God or oneness, or we forgot the purpose of why we're here. And maybe COVID has been a reminder for us that, hey, at our core, the point of life is a spiritual search.
yeah,
It's not these other preoccupations that we
yeah.
have.
I'm
Worldly.
getting goosebumps because I'm like, from the darkness comes the light, right? And I do, based on what I've seen, do believe that some of this is very dark, that is, this is going to sound pretty harsh, but perpetrated on humanity right now. And I mean, obviously there's different perspectives on that, but I think that the part of the awakening process is really learning to connect into what the truth is, right? Because there's perspectives, and at least my belief is that there's truth, like undeniable truth versus perspective.
Sure.
And that's something that you actually talk about in your book, because I think we're evolving even past some of the models of dualism. You talk about that in your book, about duality. Excuse me, I guess the term's duality, right?
Dualism is fine.
Okay.
That's great. No, I get completely where you're going. Absolutely.
And so, so I'll let you explain what duality is. I can do that, but you're the author of this. So
Yeah, well, I was just saying that, when you really get deeper into the spiritual search, and you start to realize that things aren't black and white. For example, the most basic one, the idea of there being a creator and then there's the creation. Well, that's a dualism. The idea that over here, separation. Another description for dualism is separation. So over here, we have the creator, and over here, we have creation, when actually they're one and the same, right? There's not, there's some kind of divine spark, but we're also a part of that entire consciousness, right? So that's a way to shift dualism. And when you start off on the path, it's pretty easy to get lost in that. Oh, there's the creator, there's the creation. And the more you get into direct spiritual practices like meditation or prayer, you start to realize that the two are intertwined. So that's the most obvious one that most seekers on the path will start to come to on their own. But then as it relates into society, matter, everything that we see in our physical world is a reflection of spirit. At least I believe that. It's a greater, if we see sort of what we might call evil, it's a reflection of the darkness in what we might call like a spiritual war between light and dark forces. And if we see the light, it's a reflection of that, right? So, dualism, this idea that there's separation, is something that we in this physical world get caught in and have to overcome. So there's, the most obvious forms of dualism, black and white. There's uh Republican and Democrat in our politics, or, we get lost in all of these dualities, these modes of separation, this or that, when really what I'm trying to say in the book is, maybe this time that we've been in this last year and a half has opened us up to the fact that that's not entirely accurate, that rather than looking at things as modes of separation, what if everything is more closely tied to each other than we think?
Well,
And
so
that's,
I'm going to
yeah,
totally like shake this up here then. So,
please.
so that's kind of what I'm saying is in the old paradigm, and I would consider that the matrix, like what people might call the matrix, right? Being caught up in that narrative that this is an issue between black and white, or this is even an issue between Democrats and Republicans, or it creating this war almost between whatever this versus that. And I in my my vision of it, or my perspective of it, is that once you get out of that sort of matrix, that yes, you could say we're all one, right? We're all human race, for example. We still have to come together and look at, well, then what is the truth? And how do we then move forward as a humanity? I don't know if you understand where I'm going with that. And so we still have.
Yeah. Once we transcend dualism, this idea of getting caught in our separateness, how do we then proceed as one? Essentially, it's to ascertain truth.
Right. Yeah. Because you could say that, and again, I'm going to use a very extreme example because I think that this is beyond black and white and left and right and all of that. Like, now you're talking about some things that I would say look incredibly demonic. I mean, these are some things that are happening are sociopathic, people that literally don't have a connection to their soul, making decisions that they're okay with. I know that this is debatable right now. People are not totally seeing the truth. So I'll go back to Germany, right? We can all agree that there was genocide there, right?
100%.
And so the darkness of that there were humans that were perpetrating that. And so I almost like, is that really a left or right? Or is that I don't even know, like, at some point, yes, we're all one of that, right? Like, I think in the Bible, it says something like, when God created creation, something about then there was corruption, right? Or then there was evil or something. I'm not. And so I do believe that.
Yep. I was gonna say, yeah, everything with like the fall and all that,
Yeah. I mean, even Satan is supposed to be a fallen angel of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so I'm trying to even come to terms with, well, okay, so I get that that's actually God too, but then do we actually cohabitate on this planet?
Yeah, no,
that might be kind of an out there sort of thought, but it's interesting. So you were about to say something, so.
So yeah, I was just gonna say, no, I totally, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. I think this has been an interesting time for us to come to terms with higher truths.
Yeah.
But that can't come until we transcend all of our illusions of separateness.
Right.
And that's the catch there. Right. And I'm not sure how, I'm not sure to the degree we've all come on that path.
Say that again. You're not sure.
Oh, I, I'm not sure if we've arrived at that point where we can come to an agreement or understanding collectively of what those higher truths may be. I think we're still trying, as you say, to escape from this matrix, the what Hindus might call Maya, right? The illusion, the worldly
Yeah.
illusion,
Yes.
and trying to transcend that. That's kind of the first stage. And that's what I mean kind of by spiritual awakening, that each of us first needs to go inward and explore those higher truths within us first
Right.
before we can even come to some kind of greater collective awareness. It's a process, and it's a long unfolding process.
And so here's what's kind of fascinating about it is, and you talk about it in your book that even you fell sort of victim to it. So I stopped watching the news like 20 years ago.
It's
And
good. I bet you're a lot more sane because of it.
well, I'm still like, and now I still don't watch the news, but I'm seeing articles and definitely doing research outside of that, which I don't necessarily want to see. So I don't know whether, but anyway, yeah. So one of the things I guess, probably 20 years ago, I've been connected to God, or I mean, I can't claim I know what God is, right? So God, universe, whatever. People, were you going to say something?
No, no, no.
Oh, so I was gonna say, so I've since I was 5 years old, I can remember like having literal conversations with God, and I was not raised religiously. And about 20 years ago, I had kind of an even more awakening, and that's probably about the time when I stopped watching news as well. And so about the spiritual journey, I'm kind of coming back to what you're saying is it's actually somewhat profound that I have found so many people that are following a particular narrative are so disconnected from what their own truth is. And so
Mm.
maybe that's not even the universal truth. Maybe that's just their own truth. And I've seen people fighting on social media, and they're trying to get their point across, and they're arguing over something that, or some people are, right? Not, I shouldn't say they. There are some people that are arguing over an illusion.
That's exactly, and that's kind of yeah, one of my points in the book is to say that COVID has brought forth in dramatic fashion this illusion that we've been living under. And we can find our freedom, our true spiritual freedom, once we stop becoming attached to that worldly illusion.
Yeah.
And it's shown
Amen,
us
brother.
that, oh, absolutely, oh my gosh, I'm totally with you.
Right.
It's shown us that our governments are beyond not representing the people. It's shown us that our economy is rigged in favor of a few. It showed us that even our organized religion, what's claiming the mantle of spirituality, is anything but. It's this has been an interesting time where all of our collective illusions have been popped simultaneously. And when our outer illusions are popped, that only leads us to one thing, and that is to go inwards to search for our own greater, higher truth. And yeah, it's created, there's no doubt that this period has created a lot of anxiety for people when they watch their illusions being popped. And it creates real suffering for people. But out of that comes the sandpaper of awakening. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
sandpaper
that
for
was
our
a good
awakening.
analogy that you used, is the sandpaper of, which is kind of like the pearl, right?
It's the pearl. The pearl has to go
Yeah.
through, yeah, like you said, the dirt and the
Yeah.
rough stuff in the soil
Yeah.
before it can be uncovered and polished.
Yeah. So, here's sort of just more of a question, like, so what do you think holds people to it so tightly? Like, what is keeping some of, I see that more and more people are awakening and they are getting more connected to seeing the illusion, I guess, and more connected to themselves. But
Yeah.
like, what keeps people holding on so tight to, to me, like, it's hard to understand, like, why people aren't like, okay, you know what, like, why don't you just sit down and meditate for 60 seconds even?
So I was just going to say it. So if you happen to be disconnected from God, from spirit, the world is pretty terrifying. I mean, the world can be terrifying if you're connected
Right.
to spirit.
Yeah.
If you're not connected to spirit, it's even more terrifying because, you know, for you and I can tell that we have our refuge is found within, our refuge is found in God or spirit or the one. That's not, so all this stuff on the illusionary stuff, all the politics and the world of the economy and all of that, it, it may still disturb us, but it's more kind of just absurd, to us. It's more like,
Yeah.
I'd prefer not to even pay it any attention, just
Well, we have a
absurd.
choice not to participate, right?
Not to participate. The old phrase from Timothy Leary in the 60s, turn on, tune in, drop out, don't pay attention to it. I don't even give it the time of day. But if you're not rooted in that, and everybody awakens at different times, it doesn't mean that we're superior to anybody else or anybody
No.
else is inferior to us. And that's the remarkable thing about awakenings, right? They happen when you least expect it, and everybody has an awakening at a different point in time. And just because you have your first awakening doesn't mean that's the only awakening. You go
Yeah.
through various,
Different level.
ups and downs. So,
Yeah.
but if you're not rooted in that living spirit, Cynthia, right? This is a terrifying time for you. And if you don't know where or how to look within, you are, the only way to turn to is what's out there, and you grasp even tighter to the illusion. It's like kind of like the what is it, the Stockholm syndrome,
Well, yeah, I was going to
where,
say Stockholm syndrome is a lot of people are, I mean, the people that are wearing masks in their cars by themselves.
oh gosh, yeah, that would be a that would be a wonderful example of that. Or and you're when you're not rooted in here, you grasp ever tighter to the outer illusions, to the Maya, and you look for protection and assurances from the outside. So I think that's what that a lot of that is about. And I see that a lot in the, believe it or not, as much as people in academia, in colleges, as much as there's that, like, that emphasis on the intellect, and people think these
Right.
academic and these college centers, the people in there know a lot. Actually, what you find is the majority of people in academia are what I would call very atheistic. They're so hyper rational, they lack their inner faith. And when you lack that inner faith, what I see is those folks are the ones who are grasping even tighter to the illusion,
Yeah.
mother, because without absent that inner faith, I have to, everything that father government is telling me I must listen to, or everything that, is coming out of their mouths of the public health officials must be the sworn truth, and because they're not consulting in here, they're looking out there.
It
So
like, it's so, and I just have so much compassion actually for them, because it's
yeah,
like, wow, like, I mean, I guess they don't even know how, like, to me, that would be so painful.
Yeah, and and exactly that what you just said. I have nothing but compassion for that. I mean, I've been trying to do little meditation seminars with other faculty through Zoom, through the
Oh, really?
virtual programs
And are
to
any of them open to it?
there are some people who are receptive to it.
That's
Absolutely.
so awesome.
It's cool.
So,
And there's many who have been like, oh yeah, this actually is nice. And and
how
maybe
cool.
I
What do
should,
you teach, by the way? I don't know.
oh, just philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just philosophy. Well, that's perfect. So I used to be a math professor. Did you know that?
Wow, that's pretty that's
Yeah.
like the other kind of like the other spectrum.
So it's yeah, I mean, I was definitely a what is it, like a fish out of water, because I have the ability to connect my left and right brain, I guess. I don't.
I'd say so. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So yeah, eventually, so it's kind of interesting because my spiritual awakening did happen around the time I left. Like my real powerful one that was 20 years ago. I left higher education and was having like really profound experiences, actually. I mean, I started hearing people's thoughts and I was like, oh my, I don't think I'm ready for this. So I stopped doing that. I'm like, no, that's
I mean, I'm not far behind you. I think,
okay.
I planted very soon to make my way out of academia altogether and focus on, um, my partner and I want to create a nature healing
Oh, that's
sanctuary.
awesome.
And, I want to get involved in teaching even more meditation to even
Yeah.
bigger groups of people, and obviously the writing. So I'm looking to really direct my entire life to
Well,
that.
so are you doing some coaching or anything like that yet?
Some, but
Okay.
it's limited, but I'm building up. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if people wanted to find you and learn more about your
Yep.
meditations and things, where would they be able to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, forestrivers.com, FORREST rivers.com. And it's actually being revamped and will be up next week, actually
Oh,
full
okay.
on. And you can
So
also
people
connect.
that want to be a part of your nature retreat healing center, maybe there'll be some people that would want to be involved in that.
Oh, it'd be amazing. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to be exploring that heavily over the next year or two. So
So I want to back up and share something, because you actually brought it up and you actually wrote about it in your book about something about politics. Um, oh, you were talking about the difference between belief
mhm.
and
Faith.
faith.
Yep.
And I totally dug that, actually, because it's like, oh yeah, like I just never thought of it. So can you explain that a little bit? And then I want to share something that's kind of powerful about it.
Yeah, sure. So I think, Cynthia, what you were talking about before hits that perfectly. Faith is when you consult your own inner refuge within for the truth, right? And those are the truths that are intuitive, that are based in the realm of living spirit, and that you arrive at through direct experience. That's what I see as like faith. It's those truths that you've arrived at through direct experience. There's not a shadow of a doubt. It rests in your it could rest in your devotion to God, the one, the living spirit. That's faith. Belief. So faith comes from within. Faith is is that belief is all this stuff coming, as you said, from the matrix or the illusion, right? Belief is what's being pumped out to you from the outside, and all of that stimuli, the you should do this, you should do that, this is for your protection, this is not. And we're
Right.
inundated with stimuli that's induced to create beliefs out of us. So
Yeah.
belief is basically when we latch on to what we think is the truth from the outside illusions.
Yeah,
And
because they told me so, right?
because they told me so.
They
And
told
that
me that device was safe.
they told
They
me
didn't-
that, yeah, they told me this device was safe. They told me these were the words of Christ or Buddha. But did you ever try to go within and were
and
those the words of
resonate,
Christ?
see if it resonates. Yeah.
Did it resonate? So belief is basically the one's attachments to the proclamations coming from the matrix, from the illusion. And then on, faith is what is the truth that you arrive at from within you. And another way to simply put that, faith is the inner truth and belief is the false truth or the delusion.
I love that because you gave this really awesome example. I'm like, oh, that's great. Do you remember the example about the wheelbarrow?
Oh, what's that?
The wheelbarrow. Do you remember the example?
I don't remember the example.
It's a great analogy. So, but I'll bring it back so that I don't get too off track here. I want to bring it back to the political, because when people are operating in belief, then they're also operating in ego, right? Because they're not connected
100%.
to their inner being, their inner truth. And
in fact, I would argue that when you get involved in anything having to do with the political realm, you're operating fully in ego, right? There's almost zero consulting at all of
yeah,
what's true within here, which is why there's always been a huge schism or division between, for example, social activists and between mystics. Many, there's always been that sort of divide because one is interested in ascertaining inner truth from within themselves, and the other is inundated with navigating the just multiple belief structures that are circulating through society.
yeah, that's a lot more difficult. So, what I wanted to share about that though is, the other day I was thinking, I really do need to get a Bible though, because I know a few verses, I've quoted some things, but I was not, like I said, I wasn't raised religiously. It wasn't, my mother's Catholic, my father was Jewish. And so I actually explored a lot of religions myself and studied Buddhism and all of these things as well. And that's kind of how I arrived at my place. But anyway,
Same.
I had this thought, I need to get a Bible and a physical one, because I actually want to read some of these things, like not on a computer screen. And
Yep.
I was at a client's house and she had this really beautiful Bible, like a leather bound Bible, on one of her coffee tables. And I said, oh, wow, you know what? That reminds me, I need to go get a Bible. And she says, oh, well, do you have an extra few minutes? I said, sure. And she goes and disappears into her room and goes into her closet, and she pulls out like these beautiful 3 leather bound Bibles.
Oh, wow.
So I got my Bible just like that. So, God is good. The universe
Provides.
yes. And and so I the next morning, because I meditate every morning, and I felt like, no, I really actually need to read my Bible, right? Like I want to do that. And so I'm kind of sitting there with it, and I don't think I need to start on page 1. I'm going to open up to, I will be led to what I'm supposed to read. And I opened up to Psalms 2, and I pulled up here what Psalms 2 says. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth, this is the part that nailed me, wow, I just never thought of it. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. And here's like, in addition, like this is the other part. So I think it depends on which Bible you're actually reading. This has been changed in different Bibles where it says, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. So I think that you could read that a couple different ways, but the first part, against the Lord, that they're basically telling you in the Bible. So when was the Bible written? Do you even know the history? Like, when was the Bible written?
Well,
It's
thousand.
ancient. I mean, we know that, right?
Yeah, we know at least a couple thousand years ago.
Okay. So they're telling us in these books that the rulers take counsel together against the Lord. So, I mean, again, whatever you believe God to be, but their role was never to look after us or to protect us, which has been what I think people have. I mean, we've been trained in many societies to believe that, right?
Mhm.
So that was pretty powerful that I landed on that. But here's the other part that I thought was interesting, that this has been changed to cast away their cords from us. So I know that there's energetically, there is supposed to be a cord, right? That we have a cord. And maybe you can speak to that for us more than I can, but I believe that, like, when I see myself connecting into God, like I see an energy shooting straight up to source, whatever that is. And I
Absolutely.
can feel that energy like come into my heart. I can feel it through my being. And so I find it interesting that they would have said to cast away their cords. Like, are they trying to say, were they really trying to say they were trying to disconnect us from God?
Yeah, they're saying I interpret that right there just to say uh cast away the false cords, like cast away keep your cords connected to living spirit,
And
but
not connected to the delusion,
those
right?
who rule over, and not connected to the delusion that they try to convince us that here's this false cord, and that's going into the belief versus faith. The real cord, right, between us and spirit, like when you meditate and you connect to God and you feel what you were saying, of that connection through your whole being, which was beautifully put. That's the real cord. Don't cast away that cord. Foster that cord, right? Foster it, strengthen it. But the cords that you have to outer society, to the rulers over you, cut that cord, because that's not even a real cord.
Right.
That's based off of illusion. It's based off of false consciousness.
So then I think, like, like leapfrog this, like, what's next then? So what now? Because I think that your book was a great, like, starting off place, right? Like, you talk about radical unconditional love, right? And getting beyond that. So what now is a question I have for you, and I also have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that's so what now? So it's funny, I'm actually going back and I'm adding to this book. It's probably
Okay.
going to be twice as long when it's done, and it's going to
Yeah,
be
because so much more is unfolded now.
so
So
much more is unfolded. It's not even funny, and it's actually going to be republished with probably, because, well, I don't know, long story short, my small independent publisher tragically died in August.
oh no,
He suddenly had
sorry.
found out it's okay. He suddenly found out he had cancer and passed away. It was a terrible thing that happened. And anyways, the book is going to be redone and republished. I have a literary agent and all that. And those are one of the questions I'm going to be exploring in more depth is what now? Like, so what now? Like, so here are all these ways in which the book really was about what are the ways in which we can use this pandemic to awaken. And then what now? So the question with the what now is what have people been awakening? Is there evidence that there's more people out there who are coming to the same kind of conclusions or conversations that you and I are having this moment. So that's one of the things I'm setting out to do, is to
Very
literally
cool.
interview more people and talk to everyday people and ask them two questions. What has been your personal experience during this time? And in what ways has this added more depth and meaning to your lives? And what do you, how do you, what's the question I'm looking for? How do you take this deepened understanding you've garnered, and how are you going to apply it to the world at large? How do you think your great, another way to put that is, how do you feel your greater faith or your greater understanding in here will translate into the way you interact with the world? So I really think that question of like, how, what now, really boils down to the question of, how are individuals using this unique moment for spiritual awakening to reorient their relationship with the greater world at large?
So that, yes, for sure. And so, what's coming to mind is, do you remember did you ever read Jonathan Livingston Seagull? Is that his name? The guy that, yeah, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Anyway, he wrote a book. He actually wrote many spiritual books. And in the beginning of one of his books, and can't think of the name of the book now, but I'll look it up. I'll message you on it. I'll put it in the links below. But anyway, in the very beginning of the book, he's talking about these little creatures in the ocean, and the water comes and they're hanging on really, really tight to these like pieces of algae or grass or whatever it is, under the water. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. And they're hanging on really, really tight. And this one is like, well, you just got to let go.
I love that.
And he lets go and he flows with the water, and he's just enjoying his life. And he's like, everything is provided for him and he's having fun. And all these other ones that are grabbing on, they're like, well, how could you possibly live that way? It couldn't possibly work. You have to hang on. You have to hang on. And they,
I love this. Yeah.
anyway, what's that?
I love that. I love that metaphor. That's
Yeah.
an amazing metaphor.
And so I think that that's part of what we're seeing right now in a massive way, right? Like, especially with these mandates to get, I'm going to call it the device because it's not anyway.
Well, they're all intended to keep us in fear. They're all intended to keep us, in your metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Latching on
Yeah.
and latching
And if
on
you
as a,
don't get this device into you, then you're going to lose your job and you're going to lose this, right? And so that's part of the metaphor. If you don't hang on, you have to comply. We've renegotiated your freedom.
yep, absolutely.
And
When really, in essence, there's no one that has the right to control your freedom, right? You're the only, again, freedom is not something that can be negotiated from the outside by the illusion. That's something that rests within every human being, deep down within them. There's no outside entity that ever has a right to try to dictate the terms of your own freedom.
so what would you say to a person that maybe they are in a challenging situation like that, and they're like, they don't know what to do, what decision to make?
So what I would say in this situation to people is, well, first of all, what I'd say is simply pray, right? Simply pray, meditate on it, right? Meditate on
Whether it's right for you.
whether it's right for you or wrong for you, and meditate also on protection for whatever decision that you make, right? So, and I would argue that those who are resolute in their inner faith will know that even if they do get fired from their job for making what they believe is the conscious choice, the right decision, they'll still be provided for, because they know that this material reality is fleeting anyways. I mean, when we pass to the next realm, we can't take any of this with us anyways.
Right.
So, we might as well hold on to our conscious. But for those who are absolutely compelled because of familial obligations, let's say you have, it's easier for me to say this, right? Like if my employer said to me, you have to get the vaccine or you're fired, I would say, well, to hell with this teaching job then. Peace out. Like I'm gone, because I know in here that that's where the truth is, right?
Yeah.
But if I have 3 kids, which I don't, I don't have any children, I guess you could
It
say
would be more difficult decision.
it's a difficult decision. If I have 3 kids, 4 kids, I have a wife to support, I have all that, that's a much harder decision. I would never judge anyone for coming to the decision to, for example, get the vaccination, right? So that's a tougher situation, in which case I would just say, pray and meditate on it and just wish for protection if you have to get it, and that's I think that's the thing. But I think ideally, in a society that respects living spirit, nobody should ever be made to have to choose between their ability to be able to get on in this world and their personal truth. No one should be put in that situation to have to choose between the two. That is a great affront to the living spirit, but it's not surprising because, I mean, think about all of the structures that quote you have from the Bible. The rulers don't care about respecting our inner freedom and our inner choice and our inner truth. That's not their objective at all. The objective has always been about control and power. That's all it's about. It has nothing to do with public safety. It has nothing to do with the well-being of individuals. It has nothing to do with even concern about how many people die from COVID. They don't care, right? The only thing that really matters is our obedience to them. And there's a reason. And think about this, there's a reason why the people in power from any historical time period have always feared true mysticism. Because when you start to really delve deep within yourself, you realize that all of the puppet masters are full of it. And you don't even acknowledge their authority. The only authority you acknowledge is the God within. Once you come to that place of inner faith, why would you listen to any of those authorities? It doesn't resonate.
Yeah, I'm it's definitely a fascinating world that we're in, and I think part of the what now is people recognizing that, not only detaching from the matrix, right? In addition to that, like recognizing our sovereignty, right? Recognizing that, what you just said, that there's nothing that they can ultimately do to us. Yes, there's these negative things in this physical world that they can try to perpetrate, but at the end of the day, if you've stayed true to who you are and to your own inner truth, then you're still free. Yeah,
you're still free. They can't ever conquer you. And again, that's why those people in power have always feared true people who are truly devoted to the pursuit of inner truth and living spirit. Those have been the people that have been feared the most in society.
well, I mean, I could probably talk to you for hours and really go down the rabbit hole, but I would like to actually take some time to do one of the meditations that you talk about in your book.
Sure.
Could you, before we do that, do you have any additional comments or thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I'd say this is there's been some very real suffering that have no doubt come out of this period, between, people who have the vulnerable who have gotten sick from it, but also the other side, those who have lost their jobs during this time or had their businesses locked down, and the loneliness and anxiety many people have been feeling as a result of the growing mental health problems is what I'm getting at
Yeah.
from
Well,
from
didn't
this
they say
period.
the statistics on that have been really bad, right?
Have been
That,
horrible. Suicide rates are up. You know, drug addiction is up. You know, all of these things, like not positive statistics, mental health indicators. I've seen it with my own students. Lots of emotional distress. But despite all of this very real suffering, I guess the message of my book is to say, um, we can we can use this suffering to grow in our awareness, to grow in our compassion, to grow in our love, to grow in our inner truth. What's required for that is simply a shift of perspective. Well, what is also required is to give up, and that perspective means we give up fear. We give up fear, and we give up um, looking out there for solutions, and we find courage and we look within here. And that's really my main message from the book.
so, so regarding that, I actually did mean to ask you this anyway, is, it's an addiction, just like anything else. And, when people, and I've even found myself kind of sometimes going too far down the rabbit hole. It's like, okay, but now I've got my information, right? And it becomes like people watching mainstream, for example. And I know now the statistics, I think I might have mentioned it earlier, is only 36% of the people actually believe it's even true anymore. So there's a good percentage of people that are already discounting it, but it's like a heroin. And so once people are addicted to it, how do you recommend they break free from that so that they can get to where you're talking about?
Well, I think a good start. You talked about it right off in the beginning. Is stop watching the news. Stop engaging with that so much. Right? I've had to cut way back, even just reading about it.
Yeah.
Cut that out as much as possible.
Yeah.
And maybe for every 20 minutes you would normally go to the news, go meditate instead, right? Or pick up more wholesome habits, spend more time in nature. Uh, that's part of my everyday. Try to connect with nature in some way, whether it's hiking, whether it's gardening, whether it's playing music outside. Find more wholesome activities that replace, binge watching the news or engaging with it all, because they'll keep it coming. They'll keep the fear
Keep it
machine going.
coming.
They'll
Yeah.
there'll be a ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 15th variant, and they're not going to stop. They're going to keep pumping that fear with us, as
Yeah.
long as they can keep it going. So, just deplug from the matrix as much as possible and focus on your own inner growth. Pick up wholesome activities, like I said, meditate more, get out into nature, connect with the natural world. Creative expression is wonderful for reducing anxiety and enhancing connection to living spirit. Paint, play music.
Anything that's, yeah.
Right. Anything that's wholesome. Pick up books about the saints from different faiths, whether it's from the Hindu saints or the Christian saints or Buddhist saints. Pick up inspiring books to fill your head with positive things that
Yeah.
will direct you on the path. Just
It's
deplug.
interesting because initially it might be difficult, and I hear this all the time. Oh yeah, but I just have a busy mind, right? Like, yeah, so that's exactly why you need to meditate. Like,
Exactly. In those times where you find resistance to meditate, and I have those days still a lot, where I'm like, I don't feel like doing it today. My mind's just not in the right place. Well, that means that I probably need to meditate that day, even more so than most days.
And so what I was going to say about that, right? Exactly. So once you begin, like initially it's hard, and some days it's harder than others for sure. Like, some days I catch myself looking at my phone going, wait a minute, I don't need to be looking at any of this. Like my dogs are sitting here wanting to play with me. Why am I not enjoying this present moment?
We're all guilty. And Cynthia, we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
Just by living in this modern world. I mean,
yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've caught myself on my phone, or my thoughts are wandering off somewhere where like, what am I doing?
Right. So being able to be present to that, one of the things that I found is, I love meditating, and because I've done it so for so long, that to me, if I don't do it, I already feel like, gosh, I didn't get, to me, that's a better heroin fix than watching the news. And I'm not saying that we should have our heads in the sand and not know anything about what's maybe happening in the world. While at the same time, like, we don't need to be so drawn into that. And if you can just start taking that first step and start retraining yourself to have a new addiction.
That's it. And a healthy one, and one that will actually build that inner faith, because inner faith is what will bring that inner peace.
Yeah.
Not clinging to beliefs that are programmed into you from the outside. That is not a source of inner freedom.
So with that, are we ready to, can you describe to us your meditation and where it came from in a little bit, and then let's do it.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we'll do a little today, a metta meditation, which is just a loving kindness meditation that comes from the Theravada Buddhism. And it's how do I say this? It's just basically the act of sending goodwill to all beings. And I first found this practice out through my first meditation teacher, Dave Smith, who would end every Sunday night Dharma session. He lived in Nashville, Tennessee at the time, and that's where I met him. And he would end every session with a 10-minute to 15-minute metta practice. And I remember that was my favorite part of every session, because it's the one that activated and opened my heart more than anything. Not that I didn't enjoy the rest of the session, but this was always my favorite part. So that's when I started practicing it. And that was about, say 8 or 9 years ago. And this is a powerful practice that I would point out to all your viewers too, that has even been linked to ending wars. There were, and I talked about it in the book that in Lebanon, when they were involved in wars in the, I want to say in the 80s, there was a series of conflicts, breaking out between Lebanon and Israel. And on days, there'd be certain days where there'd be hundreds of people like us, Cynthia, and your viewers, who would gather around and they would meditate for up to 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and they would have focused sending feelings of goodwill to the conflict. And every time they finished the meditation, this is no joke, this was like confirmed in scientific journals, the conflicts between the two sides would go immediately into a ceasefire, inexplicably, every time that these widespread metta practices were held. And they did this in the surrounding war zone where this happened. So, I mean, this isn't some, what's I'm looking for. It's not
No,
some
it's true science. I mean, they've actually
true
done
science.
this in many different locations, and I don't remember off the top of my head the studies that were done, but they actually went into high violence areas as well.
The high violence areas. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were famous this has been duplicated, like you just said, and it's really powerful, and it kind of fits into what we've been talking about. If you heal yourself within, and then you start directing those healing thoughts outside, maybe that's how change is made. So
yeah. So and just before you start, so one of my intentions is, and this is something I've been thinking about for I don't know, for at least like the last 6 months. I remember when they first did the lockdowns, and I actually saw people doing global meditations, and I haven't seen it lately, and I think we need that more now, more than ever. And I don't know what it would take, but I'm putting that out there, that if we could collectively get 1 million people together, I don't know what the statistic needs to be in order to really transform what's happening on the planet right now. I do think that could be transformative.
if you gathered, let's say if you gathered maybe even 100,000, 200,000 people, and they all meditated on peace and goodwill, and you would you would almost certainly see something significant happen in terms of our consciousness.
All right. Well, I'm putting that out there, folks. Whoever has a huge following or whatever you've got, to spread the word, and let's do this. We'll plan to maybe do this again, join back and do a massive one. What
if we all built that up with our followings, where we try to pick a day, it could be like 6 months out, and we just build this up and promote that. That's inspiring.
I'm in. So we're putting it out there. People, reach out to me, reach out to us. I'm in. I'm ready.
Let's do that.
All right. So let's start with today.
So what I'd like everyone to do, and I'll just briefly lead everybody through a 5-6 minute, metta practice. You can do this for as long as a half hour, for as short as 5 minutes. There'll be a benefit no matter what. So what I'd like everybody to do, just find a comfortable place to sit. You can be in a chair. You can be sitting cross-legged. I want you to slowly close your eyes. I want you to focus deeply on your breath. Just taking deep inhales and exhales. Just breathe in and out. Just tune first to your own breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Now I want you to focus or picture, as you breathe in and as you breathe out, a bright pink light that emerges in the center of your chest. So as you breathe in, picture that pink light filling your entire chest cavity, permeating through your lungs, through your heart. So breathe in and picture that light just filling your entire heart space, your whole chest cavity, permeating through your lungs. And breathe out. So breathe in that pink light. And breathe out. Now, as you breathe in that pink light and you picture it filling your entire heart, you picture it filling your lungs. On the out breath, I want you to picture that light flowing out to anyone who in your life you know is suffering. So breathe in that pink light and breathe that pink light out. And picture that light extending out to those who may be suffering in your immediate life. It could be a sick relative. It could be a friend suffering emotionally. It could be a sick animal. Whatever that suffering is, picture that pink light of goodwill and love and healing sending out to those beings. So breathe in that pink light. Breathe that pink light out. And picture it filling the hearts of those beings who are suffering in your life. Breathe in. Breathe out that pink light. Now, extend these feelings of goodwill beyond just those in your life who are suffering, and now extend it out to all in your town or city who may be suffering. And say these words: may all beings be at peace. May all beings be free. May all beings be relieved of mental and physical suffering. So breathe in that pink light. Breathe that pink light out to all who may be suffering in your city, in your town. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free. May all beings be relieved of mental and physical suffering. Breathe in that pink light. Breathe out that pink light. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free. May all beings be relieved of mental and physical suffering. Now, for the last part of this exercise, direct that pink light of goodwill to all those in the entire country of the United States and extending out to the whole world. And repeat the same phrase. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free. May all beings be relieved of mental and physical suffering. So breathe that pink light in. Breathe that pink light out. And picture it spreading around the entire country, around the entire world, relieving people of hunger, of poverty, those who are sick, those who have lost loved ones and struggling to come to terms with death, those caught in war zones. Picture that pink light spreading over the entire world and relieving suffering. Breathe that pink light in. Breathe that pink light out on the out breath. One more time. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free. May all beings be relieved of mental and physical suffering. Now continue for the next 30 seconds in silence, repeating that phrase and breathing that pink light in and pink light out. And slowly start to open your eyes. All right. And again, there's different variations of this exercise. You can alter the phrases as you will. You can shift it from a pink light to a white light if you so choose. You can do this for 5 minutes. You can do this for 30 minutes. You can focus entirely on relieving your own suffering and those in your immediate circle, or you can extend it out further beyond your circle. There's a whole number of ways that you can do this. It can be directed at one person who's really suffering that you know of. There's a whole number of ways that you can take this exercise.
I love that. That felt great. Thank you so much.
And we should work on that, pushing for that day of that maybe it's an hour or
yeah. So like I said, I've been kind of already thinking about it for a while, and absolutely, not just our networks, but I know people that might, like you said, like if everybody could spread it out to their friends, their family, whether they have a network or not, just even the people that they know.
be fantastic.
Yeah. All right, we'll do it. So I don't know about picking the date quite yet, but yeah, I'll reach out to you and I'll keep everyone posted on that.
That's fantastic.
I love it. So can you repeat the words of that again?
Yeah. So just the phrase.
The phrase. Yeah. I know it's
may
in your
all-
book too, but
Yeah. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free. May all beings be relieved of mental and physical suffering. And again,
just by saying that, it lightens your heart, doesn't it?
it lightens your heart tremendously. And again, there's different variations of that. I don't want to claim to be the only variation of that. I mean, I should point this out. There are actually enlightened beings, of which I am not. There are actually enlightened beings, monks, people who literally devote their entire existence to the pursuit of God, who have removed themselves from worldly life. And their variations of this would be far beyond, far more in depth than what we just did today, clearly. So I want to say that this is meant to be just one surface level variation of this, but it can do a lot. It can do a lot of good.
Well, awesome. That was brilliant. I loved meeting you and chatting with you today. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure to be on your show today.
Thank you. All right.